Serafina Winslow. When Gideon Whitlock mentioned divorce for the third time, I agreed. I didn't expect her to change her mind. Don't you dare try to make me nervous. I'm not joking. Looking at the face I had loved for 5 years, I smiled lightly. I'm not joking. Let's get a divorce. Serafina stared coldly at my name on the divorce agreement. Are you serious? Seeing that I didn't respond, Serafina lifted her head, her eyes filled with complex emotions. I'm not joking. Don't play games with me. I've seen this trick too many times. I lowered my head, trying to recall Serafina's smile. But I realized that the smiling Serafina I remembered had become blurry. When did it all start? Serafina wouldn't even give me a smile anymore. On the day of our wedding, I married a man I didn't love. Later, my lover returned. But I kept clinging to her, unable to divorce her. She hated me so much she couldn't even smile at me. I took a deep breath, looked at her calmly, and said clearly, "Yes, I know. I agree to the divorce." Hearing this, Serafina's brows furrowed immediately. She took a step forward, as if to confirm I wasn't thinking of something else. "Jericho Caldwell, this is your last chance." I looked up at Serafina. Her gaze was still as cold as ever. I knew deep down that she kept asking me because she wanted to make sure I wouldn't change my mind. Everyone knew that once I finalized the divorce with her, Gideon would go abroad with her. In the dead of night, I had imagined this scene countless times, the pain almost suffocating me. But when it finally came, I felt surprisingly relieved. I could finally let go. "Serafina," I whispered her name. A fleeting gleam of light flashed in Serafina's eyes, followed by an expression I knew all too well, the look of someone who couldn't let go. Before she could finish speaking, I took off the necklace and placed it in her palm. Once, during an argument, I asked Serafina why she didn't wear the matching rings. That day, she had drunk a lot, and her eyes betrayed a depth of emotion and reluctance I had never seen before. She said that only Gideon had the right to leave a mark on her ring finger. So our wedding didn't involve exchanging rings. Instead, there was a necklace I had specially commissioned, engraved with her name. Serafina's next words were swallowed back. 5 years ago, I married her with high hopes, believing it was the beginning of a happy life. 5 years later, we went our separate ways. This torturous relationship finally came to an end. Goodbye, Serafina. Before marrying Serafina, I knew nothing about Gideon. It wasn't until the wedding day that I followed Serafina's gaze and noticed she had been staring at a man who bore a striking resemblance to me. In that moment, I realized that it had all been a joke. I truly loved Serafina. After countless struggles, I ultimately chose to stand by her side. During the toasts, Gideon smiled politely and greeted me naturally. "I've often heard Serafina mention you, and today, I finally get to meet you in person. Thank you for staying by Serafina's side all these years. To bless you both, I'll raise my glass to you first." I froze. His tone sounded like he was making an announcement. I looked at Serafina, but her gaze didn't linger on me at all. Serafina frowned, snatched the glass from his hand, and drank it in one gulp. At that moment, the look Gideon gave Serafina was one I knew all too well. It was the look of someone looking at the person they love. However, the person standing next to Serafina was actually me. After the wedding, Serafina and I saw the guests off together. Gideon was the last to come out, his eyes red, clearly having just cried. Serafina looked at him and felt very sad, considering that I was standing next to her. She could only swallow her words of comfort and sigh. The taxi pulled up by the roadside. Serafina reached out to open the door, but she and Gideon made the same motion at the same time. Their hands touched. Though Serafina quickly pulled her hand back as if she'd been electrocuted, I saw the moment clearly. "Serafina, are you still wearing the watch I gave you?" Gideon looked at Serafina, his eyes filled with anticipation. Serafina paused for a moment and replied, "Yes, I'm used to it, so I've been wearing it all along." They chatted back and forth, reminiscing about their past. I stood there feeling like a third wheel. It was then that I first realized that my marriage might also be in trouble. That night, Serafina and I had our first argument since we got married. I wanted her to take off the watch, but Serafina looked very upset, furrowed her brows, and immediately said, "Can't you be a little more reasonable? You're a grown man." I looked at her in disbelief and hurriedly asked why she had kept Gideon's matter a secret from me. But she remained silent, turned her head away, and refused to look at me. That prolonged silence felt like a sharp knife slowly slicing through the last remnants of my sanity. Finally, I broke down, unable to accept that the woman I loved so deeply could still harbor feelings for someone else from her past, Winona. I rushed forward, grabbed her shirt tightly, and stood on tiptoes, trying to look her in the eyes. "You were her first love. You kissed her intimately, promised to be together forever, and kept your ring finger free for her. You never told me any of this. Why did you hide it from me? What does that make me?" Serafina's face turned pale, and she pushed me away forcefully, trying to slam the door shut. I stood at the door and demanded an answer. That day, Serafina showed her disgust for me for the first time. Before leaving, she said to me, "Jericho, if there was ever anything between me and Gideon, it would have happened long ago. What do you think you have to do with it?" Deep down, I had always known this marriage wouldn't last. Despite that, I clung to a sliver of hope, hoping to make each day count. My love for her was so deep it had robbed me of my reason. I couldn't imagine life without Serafina. I believed that if I loved her enough, she would eventually change her mind. But everyone has moments of emotional breakdown. Talking about loving someone so much that you lose your mind, that's clearly me overthinking things. Maybe I just don't understand love deeply enough. Thinking about it now, if I had known the saying better to cut your losses and move on back then, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Serafina's face was pale, as if I had done something unforgivable. I sneered inwardly. Was it because I agreed to the divorce too decisively, making her feel humiliated? At this point, who cares about such trivial matters? "Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning." After saying that, I stood up to leave. While waiting for the elevator, Serafina ran out and blocked my way. "Jericho, what are you doing?" I looked at her with a hint of amusement. The matter was almost settled, yet she was still worried that I had other intentions. What tricks could I possibly have up my sleeve? In truth, I had come to realize that letting her go was also letting myself go. I took a step back, let go of Serafina's arm, and spoke as gently as I could. Finally, I told her seriously I agree to the divorce. "You don't need to worry that I'll bother you. If you're still uneasy, we can find a lawyer tomorrow to draft an agreement. I have no interest in your future life with Gideon, and I won't make things difficult for myself. You don't need to worry about me." I felt pretty good about myself. I must have looked pretty cool. "No way." Serafina's eyes turned red as she stared straight at me. Her voice trembled slightly. "Tell me, why did you agree to the divorce this time?" I felt a bit confused and brushed it off lightly. "I'm just tired." "Is it because of your birthday?" "My birthday?" "Because it wasn't a happy one, I chose to forget it. I didn't expect her to remember." "That's right. Serafina first brought up divorce on my birthday. I knew she was busy, so I made plans a week in advance to go to the ocean park on her birthday. That day, I woke up early, feeling happy, and left the house. We had agreed to meet at noon. I waited until 1 o'clock but still didn't see Serafina. The phone didn't ring, and I sat on the bench, feeling a dull pain in my chest, making me feel a bit dazed. Just then, my phone rang. It was a message from a friend. We were so close that they even sent a playful message. They also sent a photo taken secretly at the movie theater. In the photo, Serafina was wearing a white strapless dress, while Gideon was wearing the shirt Serafina had bought for him. No wonder even our friends mistook them. We really do look alike. It turned out that Serafina hadn't answered my calls because she was watching a movie with him. All my strength drained out of me. I sat in the park for a long time until the staff started cleaning up the area, and only then did I realize I needed to leave. When I got home, Serafina was sitting on the couch. Seeing me come in, she frowned and spoke in a tone filled with reproach. I didn't answer the phone because I must have had something important to do. Look at you. What's the difference between you and a crazy person on the street in that moment? I vented all the anger I'd been holding in all day. We argued fiercely. Serafina stood there stunned, shouting at me, "Jericho, what do you want? Is your job just to watch movies with Gideon? Do you want to get back together with him?" The moment those words left my mouth, the room fell silent. I realized I had overreacted and took a deep breath before turning toward the bedroom. I wanted to calm down first and talk to Serafina properly later. Just as the door was about to close, Serafina suddenly said, "Yes, I want to start over with Gideon. I love him. If possible, I want to marry him. Are you satisfied now?" Serafina collapsed onto the sofa, staring at me coldly. "Being with you really makes me feel exhausted. It was just a movie. Did you really need to get so worked up? Can't we celebrate your birthday later?" See, she still doesn't understand why I'm upset. It seems like after that, Serafina started constantly handing me divorce papers. She knew I wouldn't sign them, but she still brought them to me, mocking my emotional outburst and accusing me, "Jericho, our marriage has become like this because of you. If I had known you were this kind of person, I never should have married you." Now, Serafina can't help but bring up these old issues again, seeing that I didn't respond. Serafina asked again, "Is it because of my birthday?" I stared at her face and suddenly realized I was too impatient to explain anymore. Even though there were many things I wanted to say, I didn't want to say them anymore. She just doesn't love me, so she won't particularly like me. If we were to find a decent-sounding reason for this failed marriage. I smiled slightly and looked at her, saying, "That's right, it's because of my birthday." I did as she said. Serafina froze for a moment, her gaze fixed on me as if lost in thought. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but after a long pause, she decided against it. After a while, Serafina finally spoke, "Stay here. This house is yours." Hearing this, I immediately picked up my bag and went back inside. Who would turn down money? After entering the house, Serafina also began silently packing her belongings. There wasn't much left to take. She had already moved her things to Gideon's house. Besides a few changes of clothes and essentials, there was nothing else here. I sat on the sofa, comfortably watching her come and go. Love really is a mysterious thing. The day before, I had hoped to keep Serafina by my side, but now I felt she was packing too slowly. I asked her, "What time tomorrow?" Serafina seemed not to hear me and continued with her own tasks. I grew impatient and raised my voice, asking again, "What time tomorrow?" Serafina stood with her back to me, her hands hanging limply at her sides. "Serafina, I'm asking you what time you're going to get divorced." Suddenly, Serafina kicked the suitcase on the ground and turned around, staring intently at me. Those deep black eyes held so many emotions. It was like she was questioning me, blaming me, and there was also a hint of hurt and confusion. I couldn't understand, but I didn't have the strength to ask anymore. After a moment, Serafina said, "I'll go first thing tomorrow morning." On the surface, I remained calm, but inside I felt a pang of sadness. What I was clinging to wasn't Serafina, but the version of myself who had once loved her deeply. Perhaps I'll never love someone with the same passion I once did. I stood up, gathered Serafina's scattered luggage and placed it beside her. "It's getting late. You should go." I watched her silently, waiting for her to continue. "We've come this far in our relationship, and it's all my fault," Serafina started to say. But I interrupted her with a light laugh, my tone teasing. "I know it's all my fault. You've said that so many times I'm almost sick of hearing it." I smiled calmly, as if I were telling a joke that had nothing to do with me. The memories that once broke my heart were now hidden behind my seemingly carefree smile. I was wrong to fall in love with someone I shouldn't have loved, and to believe words I shouldn't have believed. If I could, I truly wish you wouldn't be happy in the future. Gideon had been waiting for Serafina downstairs for a long time. Before leaving, Serafina turned back several times. "Jericho, I'm leaving. Okay, I won't see you off. I really have to go." "All right, then I won't see you off," as Serafina tried to speak for the third time. I was already growing impatient. I pushed her out the door and slammed it shut, the sound echoing loudly. Serafina stood in the hallway, feeling the lingering warmth on her body. She stared blankly at her luggage, her gaze fixated on the doorbell. I didn't overlook the lingering affection and reluctance in Serafina's eyes. But what did it matter? That night, I slept exceptionally soundly. The weight on my heart had finally lifted. I wouldn't be woken up by Gideon and Serafina's happiness in my dreams anymore. Everything was over. The next day, Gideon walked over from across the street, arm in arm with Serafina. But there was no one by my side. Gideon greeted me enthusiastically, as if we were old friends. I didn't look at them and walked straight into the Civil Affairs Bureau. It was a weekday morning, so there weren't many people there. Serafina and I quickly completed the procedures. Looking at the receipt in my hand, the cooling-off period for divorce was 30 days. In 30 days, I would be completely severed from Serafina. Staring at the blue sky, I felt a bit dazed. Once upon a time, I held a marriage registration receipt in my hands, thinking about the future and swearing to be with her forever. Serafina stood beside me without saying a word, while Gideon was as happy as if he'd won the lottery. It was still early, so I suddenly felt like going to the supermarket to browse around. I wanted to cook a hearty dinner tonight. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from behind me. "Jericho." Instantly, a familiar figure flashed through my mind. I turned around and she was already standing in front of me. She took off her sunglasses, glanced at Serafina beside me and said teasingly, "I heard you've been lucky lately. Turns out you got divorced. Congratulations on your divorce." I never expected Winona Fairchild to be here. The last time we met was at the wedding. I remember that day clearly. The night before the wedding, a friend called me, saying that Winona was drunk at our usual bar and wouldn't go home no matter how we tried to convince her. I sighed and asked her to hand the phone to Winona. Winona answered the call, her voice sounding a bit tipsy. "Jericho, congratulations on your wedding. I'm truly happy for you." I felt a bit helpless, not wanting to blame her, so I softened my tone. "Just be happy, but don't drink too much. Can you get up for the wedding tomorrow?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then no response. I patiently urged her, "Even if you're happy for me, you need to take care of yourself. Please go home and rest properly now." "Okay, On the day of the wedding, Winona arrived on time and served as my bridesmaid. She stood beside me with a proper smile on her face, warmly greeting the guests who had arrived. At the time, I saw how thoughtful and attentive she was, and couldn't help but praise her. "You're amazing. Someone might think you're the one getting married." Winona just smiled without saying anything. A friend beside me looked at me with an expression as if I were an idiot, then nodded meaningfully. "She must have put a lot of effort into this for you." At that moment, my mind was only on Serafina, and I didn't hear what my friend said. When the wedding began, Serafina and I stood on the stage. Below the stage, Winona kept watching me, her eyes filled with emotions I couldn't quite decipher. She said, "Jericho, I wish you happiness in the future." Before the wedding ended, Winona left. I tried to contact her but never received a response. Over time, I stopped thinking about it. 5 years later, when I saw her again, I was taken aback. Winona smiled and tapped my head, just like before, bringing her face close to mine. "You haven't forgotten me, have you?" The familiar scent of her perfume brought back so many memories. It was the perfume I had chosen for her birthday gift years ago. And I never expected her to still be using it. Seeing her face, I couldn't help but feel a bit angry. Someone like you, disappearing suddenly and then reappearing out of nowhere. "I wouldn't remember you." Winona couldn't help but laugh. "Should we reintroduce ourselves?" She made me laugh, so I asked her how she ended up here. "Besides my friends." I hadn't told anyone else about my divorce. Winona just shrugged it off, saying it's fate cough. Serafina's voice suddenly rang out and she stared straight at Winona. Though she didn't say anything, I could clearly sense the hostility in Serafina's eyes. I ignored her and pulled out my phone to call a friend. Since you're back, let's call everyone and meet up tonight. Winona pulled me over to her side. It's okay, I already made plans with them. We're meeting at the usual spot tonight. The usual spot was the bar we used to frequent. Jericho stayed up late last night and his stomach isn't feeling well, so he can't drink. The area was quiet, and I looked at Serafina in confusion. What was she doing? Serafina seemed to realize she had been rude and awkwardly turned her head away to avoid my gaze. Winona was furious and confronted Serafina. Who do you think you are to meddle in our business? Serafina clenched her teeth and angrily replied, the divorce cooling off period isn't over yet. I'm still his wife. Hearing Serafina's words, I couldn't help but laugh. Half a month ago, she had said, I really want to divorce you right now. If I think about it seriously, she might be even more eager than I am. Winona glanced at her, then turned to look at Gideon, who was pale-faced, and teased, you haven't changed your mind. Have you? Did he agree? Serafina finally noticed Gideon, hurriedly grabbed his hand and explained, Gideon, that's not what I meant. What's going on here? I can understand why Winona is so aggressive. I don't like her arguing, and I used to remind her to watch her words and actions to avoid trouble. But right now, I'm really happy. The people who were willing to stand up for me 5 years ago are still here for me when I need them. After Winona finished yelling, she glanced at me secretly. I knew she was worried I might be angry. Why did you yell at her? Gideon pointed at Winona angrily, his body trembling slightly. Winona gave her a dismissive look. You're really something, ha. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. It had been a long time since I felt this happy. People are always selfish. Gideon was flushed from being scolded, but he knew deep down that he was wrong. At that moment, Serafina was staring at me, lost in her own smile. Let's go. She lowered her head and turned to leave. Winona interjected at the right moment. Oh, does she not like you anymore? I stood there dumbfounded, my heart filled with mixed emotions. The Serafina I remembered was always aloof, always mocking me, thinking I wasn't good enough, even looking down on me. I had never complained about her because I had loved her. But now my feelings had changed. People are like that. They always want what they can't have. And once they get it, they don't think it's worth much. Our gathering moved from the bar to a hot pot restaurant. A friend had to work overtime, so Winona and I were sitting in a private room. The atmosphere a bit awkward. Winona picked up some freshly cooked duck intestines and put them in my bowl. I looked at her in surprise. You remember I like duck intestines. I remember all your preferences. The private room was quiet, with only the soup bubbling gently. Through the steam, I couldn't see Winona's face clearly, but I could hear my heart beating wildly. Serafina hated the pungent smell of these foods. She said that after eating them, her body would smell like chicken or duck droppings, which was truly repulsive. From that day on, I never ate those foods again. To please Serafina, I made many changes, but she seemed to take it all for granted. And Serafina might have already forgotten all these trivial matters. At the beginning of last year, Gideon settled in Haicheng. Since last year, Serafina has hardly come home at all. I can't find her and I don't know where she is. Tonight's hot pot made me feel very happy. Duck intestines, chicken gizzards, and pork stomach. I thought about getting revenge. So I ate a lot. Winona just smiled at me. The next morning I was awakened by a knock on the door. When I opened the door, it was Serafina. Is there something you need? I left something here. I stepped aside to let her in, gesturing for her to come in. Hurry up. When I sat down on the sofa, Serafina was still standing at the door. I asked her curiously, why aren't you coming in? Serafina lowered her head, and the items behind her were crinkling in her hands. I heard the sound and turned around to see that it was the trash bag I had thrown away last night. Where did she find it? I stood up and blocked the door, worried she might take the trash bag home. She seemed startled by my action and froze in place. You really don't want these things. She was referring to the gifts in the trash bag. Those were the proof of our brief love, things I once cherished dearly. But now, as soon as I walked in, I felt something was off. Ugh, this is so annoying. Serafina stood there quietly for a moment, then suddenly ripped open the trash bag and dumped everything inside onto the floor. She knelt down and rummaged through them with both hands. This is the photo we took on our first date. This is the bracelet I gave you, our token of love. This is the plaster doll we painted together. Finally, she pulled out the necklace engraved with her name. You don't even want this. At that moment, Serafina's expression made me think that if I nodded, she would definitely start crying. I kept nodding. Sure, if you want it, you can take it. You can sell it at the scrap yard and make some money. Serafina's eyes lit up when she heard my words. She forced a smile and asked, "Can I really take it?" Serafina knelt on the ground, hurriedly stuffing the trash into her pockets. I glanced at her, and she noticed. When I came back after drinking some water, I saw her standing at the door with tears in her eyes, looking helpless. "Can I have a bag?" My stomach was growling, and I didn't have the energy to deal with her, so I turned and went into the kitchen. "There's one on the table. Go get it yourself." Serafina fumbled around at the door for a while before finally entering the house. She saw me cooking in the kitchen and quietly sat down at the dining table. She stared at my back, seeming to think for a long time. I looked at her, wondering if she had lost her mind. I called out to her a few times before she snapped back to reality, giving me a smile as an apology. "I'm sorry. I suddenly remembered when you used to cook for me in the kitchen. We were really happy back then, Serafina." I interrupted her and asked, "Have you packed your things?" "Yes." "You have anything else to do?" I told her to leave. Serafina paused, looked at the table full of dishes and asked, "Can I stay for dinner?" I looked at her in surprise, then at the dishes on the table: braised pork brain, stir-fried duck hearts, and scallion stir-fried tripe. Didn't she used to dislike these things? To prevent Serafina from doing anything else that might make me uncomfortable, I said directly, "It's inconvenient, you should go back." Serafina sensed my displeasure. "You really don't want to stay with me for even a moment longer?" "Yes." Not even to say a word, "Yes." Serafina smiled bitterly. "It seems you really hate me." I lowered my head and thought carefully about what she had said. Do I really hate Serafina? Actually, that's not the case. She has already drained all the feelings I had for her, so even at this point I didn't hate her. I just wanted to cut all ties with her. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, we stood there in an awkward silence for a moment. Serafina finally picked up her bag and started to leave. As she reached the door, she suddenly turned around and said, "Jericho, actually, when I said I wanted a divorce the other day, I didn't mean it." She didn't finish her sentence, because she saw Winona coming out of the bedroom. "Isn't that true?" Winona raised an eyebrow, walked over to me, and stared at Serafina with interest. Serafina's eyes turned red, and she rushed forward to grab Winona's hair. "Why are you here, you two?" Winona kicked Serafina's abdomen without mercy, causing her to stumble backward and fall to the ground. Serafina clutched her stomach, her face pale and her brows furrowed, gazing at me with a piercing stare. Perhaps she was hoping I would still care about her like before. Back then, no matter how angry I was, seeing her like that would always soften my heart. But now, I only felt uneasy. Serafina, seeing I didn't react, endured the pain and struggled to her feet, raising her fist toward Winona. "Stop," I shouted. And Serafina froze in place. "Jericho, she hit me too," I nodded, understanding. "Then why didn't you just tell her?" "Why?" I lowered my head and thought carefully about what Serafina had said. "Maybe it's because I'm a bit biased. Even though it's been a long time, thinking about these things still makes me feel uneasy." That year, Serafina attended her company's annual party with Gideon. When I arrived, They were standing in the dance floor, gazing deeply into each other's eyes, their expressions filled with an intimacy that no one else could disturb. I tried to control the discomfort in my heart and act as calm as possible. At that moment, I thought to myself that if I had an intense argument with Serafina here, she would definitely be angry. After the music ended, Serafina took Gideon's hand and slowly stepped off the stage. When he saw me, Gideon let go of Serafina's hand and gave me an apologetic smile. Serafina said you didn't like this kind of place, so she asked me to accompany her. But the next moment, Serafina pulled Gideon's hand in front of me. Her eyes filled with deep affection. She looked at Gideon and said firmly, "The dance is still going on." Serafina's words completely lost my mind. Anger and resentment surged up inside me, and I immediately rushed forward, pulling Gideon away from Serafina. "You can't hold his hand, Jericho. What are you doing?" Serafina's voice was particularly sharp in the noisy hall. She ignored the people around her, pushed me away forcefully, and ran to Gideon's side, carefully helping him up. I looked at Serafina, tears blurring my vision, and shouted at her in despair, "Serafina, I'm your husband. Do you want me or her?" In that moment, the look in Serafina's eyes was as if she were looking at a stranger. "Jericho, don't let me down." The familiar pain began to spread through my heart. I took a deep breath and tried to clear those bad memories from my mind. Winona's kick felt pretty good. That's enough. The past can't be changed and I shouldn't dwell on it anymore. Come eat. Winona was eating happily and I waited beside her to serve her more rice. "This food is so delicious. I'm so lucky to be able to eat what you cook." Ever since we started dating, Winona has always been willing to compliment me. She always noticed my strengths, often told me I was great and brought me a lot of positive energy. When I was with her, I always felt at ease thinking about it. Serafina never once complimented me after we got married. It seemed like she only hated me and everything related to me. Seeing me lost in thought, Winona's eyes betrayed a hint of pain. I noticed the awkward atmosphere and gave Winona a small smile to apologize. But Winona looked very serious. "Are you thinking about the past again?" Caught off guard by her insight into my thoughts, I forced a smile and looked at her nonchalantly. "No, I was just wondering if there was enough rice in the pot. If it were me, I would never make you feel sad." I froze for a moment, about to push her away, but accidentally met her intense gaze. She was very serious. I looked away, inhaling the scent of her shower gel, suddenly unsure of what to say. But silence was also a form of rejection. After a moment, Winona returned to her seat, pretending nothing had happened, and continued enjoying her meal. "This beef tripe is so crispy and delicious." Though at that moment, Winona seemed to have returned to her usual carefree self. I could tell, though, that even though she was smiling, she wasn't truly happy. "Winona, I'm sorry." Winona had a grain of rice on her lips, hearing my apology. She quickly put down her chopsticks and hurriedly explained, "It's okay, don't say that." Her expression made me laugh involuntarily. Winona looked at me for a moment, and then laughed as well. That day, we talked for a long time. She told me about everything she had experienced over the past few years, from her home country to abroad, from the stars to the moon, from the ocean to the desert. Until the sun set, Winona Serafina stood at the door reluctantly. "Can I really not stay one more night?" I firmly refused. Yesterday, when Winona was about to leave, it suddenly started raining heavily. She was soaked through and had no clean clothes to change into, so I let her stay in the guest room for the night. As for Serafina's misunderstanding, I think it's not a big deal if she continues to misunderstand. After Winona left, I sat on the sofa, recalling the words she had said to me during dinner. I could clearly sense her feelings for me. I didn't know how to respond to her. She was a good person, but I couldn't start a new relationship immediately after ending one. That night, I couldn't sleep again. From then on, every morning, Winona would arrive at my door early, urging me to finish breakfast and take her out for a walk. We went to the mall, the cinema, and the beach. Winona seemed like she had never confessed her feelings to me, and I didn't bring it up either. That statement seemed to become a shared secret between us. The 30-day cooling-off period passed quickly. Serafina and I stood together again at the Civil Affairs Bureau. This time, the situation was completely different. Winona was by my side, but she was alone. Before the staff member stamped the document, Serafina looked at me with anticipation. I thought a lot about our feelings. "As long as you don't want to, we can, Serafina." I interrupted her before she could finish. "Let's just end this." I had plans with Winona to go to the ocean park. Winona again. Serafina perked up the moment she heard Winona's name. I nodded and said, "Yes, her." Serafina frowned, her eyes fixed on me. "Are you in such a hurry to divorce me because of her? You've been together for a while, haven't you?" I laughed, looking at her with a dismissive expression. "Serafina, you should remember that you were the one who handed me the divorce agreement." "Right?" Serafina froze for a moment, a hint of panic flashing in her eyes. That was just a moment of impulse. Impulse. That agreement can truly end our marriage and our feelings. Are you saying it was just a whim? I didn't have the energy to delve deeper into this. Every extra word I spoke to Serafina felt like a waste of time. Whether it was a whim or something serious, I just wanted to end everything with Serafina as soon as possible. Whatever. Serafina gripped my hand, her voice tinged with pleading. "Jericho, we don't have to go this far. We've always been happy, haven't we?" I replied sarcastically, "Why not? Who said we were happy? Are you changing your mind? Did you realize you really love me and can't live without me?" Serafina couldn't speak and finally lowered her head in resignation. "Love you? How could I? I only love Gideon." I glared at her. "That's good. If you loved me, I'd find it repulsive." The divorce certificate was stamped. Serafina and I were finally no longer connected. Before getting into the car, Serafina ran after me and asked, "Jericho, if I hadn't given you that divorce agreement that day, would you have initiated the divorce?" I looked at her, trying to find the vibrant version of myself from before, but I couldn't. "Serafina, we really can't be together. Love cannot tolerate lies or betrayal." Even without the divorce agreement or Gideon, our relationship was doomed to end. I had felt Serafina's fleeting affection for me before, so when she stopped loving me, I could sense it. Avoiding the issue is useless. Self-deception doesn't solve anything. A friend booked a private room to celebrate the start of my single life. Then he had to go back to work, leaving me and Winona there staring at each other. At that moment, I noticed that Winona had become very cautious, completely unlike her usual carefree self. Perhaps I was reading too much into it, but Winona gave an awkward smile and said, "Jericho, if it's inconvenient, let's meet another time." In that instant, I finally understood. No matter how we try to hide it, the words we leave behind always remain. If I didn't want to lose this person, the only thing I could do was face the problem head-on. I wiped my mouth and suddenly shouted, "Winona!" Winona was startled by my outburst, and the potato threads she was eating flew all over the table. Seeing her confused expression, I hesitated for a moment. After a brief pause, I asked, "You like me, don't you?" Winona's face turned bright red. She looked around nervously, then reached out and gently touched my forehead. "It's not hot. Why are you suddenly saying such strange things?" I was a bit annoyed and quickly pushed her hand away. She realized I wasn't joking and looked at me intently. How did you know?" I guessed. Winona remained silent for a moment, then asked, "What do you want to do?" "I'm sorry." Hearing my apology, Winona probably realized the outcome of the situation. She lowered her head, a bitter smile on her lips, and muttered softly, "I don't even have a chance at a second marriage for some reason." Seeing her so dejected, I felt a pang of sympathy. I sighed and said, "It's not what you think." Winona looked up at me, her eyes filled with anticipation, waiting for me to continue. "I've always considered you my best friend, and I'm truly grateful for your support. However, I've recently gone through a difficult relationship and don't want to rush into something new." Winona said, It's okay, I'll wait for you. After that, Winona and I were able to get along comfortably again. A few days later, I had just finished dinner and was lying in bed when the phone rang. It was Serafina calling. "What's up? I have something to tell you. Can you open the door?" I felt a bit helpless. Why not just knock on the door? I opened the door but didn't let Serafina in. "What do you want to say? Hurry up." Serafina's eyes looked like those of a wounded puppy. After a moment of silence, she suddenly pulled out a gift box from behind her back. "This is for you. It's something you've always wanted." I opened it and saw that the clothes inside were exactly the same as the ones Gideon was wearing in the photo my friend sent me on my birthday. "This shirt should be gone by now. Where did you buy it?" Serafina paused, stammering. "I bought it from a proxy shop," smelling the familiar perfume on it. I looked at her disdainfully. "Did you get it from Gideon?" Serafina froze, looking at me in confusion. "How did you know?" I sighed. "Even when we were still married. You always made me feel uncomfortable. After the divorce, you've been clinging to me all this time." Serafina's hands clenched tightly, and the corners of her eyes turned red. "No, this outfit was originally bought for you. He just wore it himself. I feel a bit helpless. We're already divorced. Why are you still lying to cover yourself?" "Serafina, you really disappoint me." After saying that, I stepped back and tried to close the door. Serafina was desperate, her eyes filled with urgency. But she couldn't bring herself to speak. Just as I was about to close the door, Serafina suddenly reached her hand through the door crack. The intense pain made her eyes well up with tears. "Jericho, let me say one last thing. Tomorrow, Gideon and I are leaving for another country. Can you bear to let me go? If you say you can't bear it, I'll stay here for you." I stood behind the door, unwilling to look at her again. "Serafina, let's give each other some dignity." Serafina stood outside the door, smiling and leaning against the door frame. She laughed until she cried. Suddenly, my WeChat notified me of a message. Serafina snatched the phone, saw the note, and angrily threw it on the ground. I was startled. "What are you doing?" Serafina's eyes turned red. "If I can't have you, neither can she. Are you two together? Jericho, look at me. I'm hurt too. Why aren't you paying attention to me, Jericho? I don't plan to go abroad anymore. I already told Gideon I wouldn't go. I'll always be by your side. We'll never be apart again." "Okay," I looked at her coldly. "Let's go." This was the first time I'd ever spoken to her like that. Serafina understood that there was no future between us. After that day, I never saw her again. The following spring, I finally received the job offer from the big company. At the celebration banquet, my phone received a text message. "Jericho, I'm sorry. Wishing you happiness." I casually deleted the message, didn't give it a second thought, and returned to the private room as if nothing had happened. Jericho's happiness was something only she could control. From that day onward, I would live every day happily.